All right, music fans, welcome back. It is Dave, the Real Music Observer, observing real music in real time for real people just like you right there, and me right here. The question in this video is, should AC/DC continue on with Axl Rose as their lead singer? And my quick answer to that is absolutely not. Look, you have Bon Scott, and he was probably the most interesting vocalist of the 1970s. I'm trying to word it properly. The dude he sung his life, okay? His voice represented who he was. And when he died, you had to have somebody come in who could carry that legacy, but who could be themselves, okay? I heard one rock critic say it was like going from a slasher horror movie to a frat party. The difference between the dark, twisted Bon Scott and the innuendo, in-your-face Brian Johnson, who never saw a bikini pool party he didn't want to attend. You know what I mean? It was just one of those transitions that actually helped AC/DC. There was a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor. I think of a tune called Sink the Pink. That's Brian Johnson all the way. I remember in an interview he was saying how it's a nautical tune. It's very seagoing and out on the boat and all that. I'm just like, right. But that's the kind of guy he is, and his personality, along with his vocal skills, kept AC/DC going and brought them to new heights. I mean, nobody's going to argue that Back in Black isn't one of the greatest albums of all time, and that crew that was there created a masterpiece along with brilliant producer Mutt Lange, who did so much for so many bands. Didn't do a whole lot for Shania Twain after a while, but hey, you know, it worked out at the beginning. So here comes Axl Rose. He fills in for a while. I heard Alice Cooper say, yeah, the voices are kind of the same. Maybe it's going to work. Nope. It's not going to work for a couple of reasons. One is Axl Rose is too identifiable as the Guns N' Roses voice. It's just too much. GNR has their own thing. Okay, they have their own sound, and Axl is just so a part of that. The difference in musical styles, people are going to say, well, they're kind of cut from the same. No, they're not. Look, GNR, again, was more of a darker band, more like maybe the Bon Scott AC/DC was. However, the difference is Angus and Malcolm Young can write riffs in their sleep. And the kind of riffs they wrote were melodic. They had a pop element. They even had a little bit of blues and R&B going on at times. Believe it or not, if you listen to all of their music, there's just these big, huge hooks where you could just tell, you know, Angus probably bouncing it off of Malcolm saying, what if we take a riff here and drop it back here and then bring it back up? In other words, there's all kinds of melodic variances in these songs, and they're simple, too. They're not complicated. They're actually very simple. And they made a living at just creating and recreating and finding another killer riff. That's the problem with a lot of melodic rock, even from overseas right now. And I like it so much better than the dark stuff being created here in the States. But the problem is there's no big opening hook. There's no opening line that catches you. There's no big just dan, 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 dan. You know, there's no like Richie Blackmore moment. And I tell you what, it's just Guns N' Roses wasn't that band. And they're still not. You know, really their catalog for me is the EP with Patience, it's a GNR Lies or something like that, and then Appetite, and then Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 a little bit here and there. And that's it for me. That's it. AC/DC, you can start at the beginning. You could start with, like, Jailbreak 74 and go right up until Rock or Bust and find a ton of just fantastic music pretty much on every album. And the difference is the riff writing, the riff masters of both Angus and the late Malcolm Young. And I'm just saying Brian Johnson was the vehicle. And I would say, look, if he doesn't recover, you're done. Okay, you're just done. Just wrap it up. Call it a career. You had an awesome career. There's no need to keep this train rolling with a guy who's really just too iconic with another band. All right? And look, maybe Brian Johnson can sing a couple of gigs. Maybe you can go in the studio and work with him and make an album, make another album. Fans would love that. Maybe do a couple of big dates with Brian Johnson singing. And that's it. No big world tour with, 80 dates or 100 dates or whatever you guys are trying to pull off. It just isn't worth it. Plus, you're just down to Angus now. And it's the Angus show, and it's got to be at least Angus and Brian, or to me, it's just not going to work out. If you had the lead vocalist, if you had Brian Johnson, I would probably say the same thing. If there was no more Angus, I would say, you know what? That's too much. That's too much of a loss right there. And you have to kind of cede over to the AC/DC tribute bands at that point, because it's not worth keeping this thing going. So that's my opinion. Yours may differ. When I first heard that Axl was fronting AC/DC, I was like, why? Why? I mean, the dude was MIA with his own band for how many years? Then all of a sudden he wants to sing with AC/DC. To me, it just seemed like, okay, why don't you just get your act together, get back with Slash, and create some decent Guns N' Roses music. Go back to the basics, man. Try to sound like the Dead Daisies or something, because they're a much better band in my opinion. But that's my humble opinion. Of course, I'm a big Dean Castronovo fan. Don't forget, folks, Patreon's only $1 a month. I need your support to keep my train rolling. And every buck you give keeps me on the air and allows me to keep going and doing more videos and having fun and living my life. I'm really living large here, you know what I'm saying? Not really, but anything helps, all right? So thanks again for tuning in. I will be back with more real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. And we'll see you then.